You think a truck sleeper cab is just a tiny bed behind the driver, right? Like a cramped little box where you squeeze in, shut the curtain, and hope you don't wake up with your neck twisted like a pretzel. Yeah, forget that idea. Because some sleeper cabs out there are so big, so ridiculous, and so over the top that they stop being a place to sleep and start being a full-on rolling apartment. I'm talking living rooms, kitchens, bathrooms, and enough space to walk around like you're in a studio condo. Except you're doing it at 70 miles per hour, hauling freight across the country. And here's the craziest part. These aren't just showpieces that sit in a garage forever. A lot of these monsters are real working trucks. Real miles. Real highways. Real truck stops. You could literally be pulling into a rest area, half asleep, grabbing a coffee, and right next to you is a semi-truck that basically looks like a mobile mansion dot. So let me ask you something. If you had to live on the road for weeks at a time, would you rather sleep in a tiny closet on wheels? Or would you turn your truck into the most absurd home you've ever seen? Because today, you're about to see the biggest and most insane sleeper cabs ever built. And trust me, the last ones on this list don't even feel real. Now picture this. You're driving for hours. The highway stretches forever. Sun's going down. You're tired. But instead of looking for a motel, you just pull into a truck stop. Step into the back of your cab, and it feels like you just walked into your own private apartment. That's the whole reason these sleeper builds exist. Long-haul drivers spend more time inside their truck than most people spend inside their own homes. So some of them stop settling for good enough and start building something extreme. And one of the biggest names in this world is ARRI Legacy sleepers. They're known for building high-end custom sleepers that go way beyond factory designs. Their whole thing is simple. You describe your dream setup, and they build it to your specifications, like a custom home builder. But for semi-trucks, that's literally what their flagship custom line is about. Pure custom, built around whatever crazy idea you want. And once you realize that, you start to understand why some sleeper cabs have gotten completely out of control. But alright, let's jump into the rigs. Let's start with a sleeper build that feels like the moment. Trucking stopped being just trucking and started becoming a lifestyle. Imagine you're in a modern highway machine, something sleek and built for long distance. But then you realize the sleeper behind it is longer than some people's entire apartment. One wild example that shows how extreme this can get is the ARRI Legacy sleeper setups. You'll find on trucks like Volvo V900L builds. Volvo trucks already have a reputation for being comfortable and modern for long-haul life. But when someone takes one of these and adds a custom mega sleeper behind it, it's like the truck gets a second life, and these aren't small add-ons. ARRI showcases sleeper builds in the 120-inch range, 132-inch range, 156 inches, and even bigger. And when you hear those numbers, you might not realize how insane that is until you picture it. 120 inches is 10 feet, 156 inches is 13 feet, 180 inches is 15 feet. That's not a bed area. That's a full living space. And inside, the goal is simple. Comfort, storage, real life. Because if you're out on the road week after week, the little details start to matter. Having space to stand up, having a fridge that isn't the size of a lunchbox, having enough room to actually relax instead of just collapsing into bed. That's why these sleepers often include things like built-in cabinets, counter space, upgraded insulation, and layouts that feel more like RV interiors than semi-truck interiors. And the wild part is, these aren't rare anymore. ARRI literally has pages full of different sleeper builds across different truck brands and styles, but you haven't even gotten to the truly absurd ones yet, because once you go past the big sleeper stage, you enter the what were they thinking stage. Let's talk about something that takes custom sleeper culture and turns it up to maximum insanity. There's a truck build that's basically a legend online. The kind of rig where people stop scrolling, zoom in, and go, wait, that's real. It's a Kenworth W990 with a sleeper so big it almost sounds like a joke. We're talking a 261-inch custom ARRI Legacy sleeper. That number alone is insane, because 261 inches is over 21 feet of sleeper space. 21 feet. That's not a sleeper. That's a hallway. That's a small room. That's the length of a moving truck dot. And no, this isn't some rumor that got exaggerated. It's been shown and documented as an actual build, described as a record-breaking super rig, with a 445-inch wheelbase and a 261-inch custom sleeper. So, just imagine pulling into a truck stop and trying to park that thing. You're not fitting into a normal spot. You're basically trying to dock a ship. And here's the funniest part. A sleeper like that isn't built because someone needs it to haul freight. It's built because someone can. Because in the custom truck world, there's always that one guy who looks at a normal sleeper and says, yeah, but what if I doubled it? And this is where sleeper cabs stop being practical and start being personal. Because at this point, you're not buying a truck. You're building your home, your comfort zone, your identity on wheels. And ARRI themselves straight up say their custom line works like that. You describe it. They design and build it to your needs. So when you see something like a 261-inch sleeper, that's not an accident. That's a vision. Now let's be real for a second. You might be thinking, okay, cool, it's massive, but what's actually inside? And that's the part that makes these builds so addictive. Because the bigger the sleeper gets, the more creative people become. You start seeing space for real furniture, not just fold-out cushions. You start seeing layouts that look like someone said, let's build a tiny apartment and bolt it behind the cab. And you also start seeing people treat the truck like a long-term investment, because here's another detail most people don't realize. These custom sleepers can be so valuable that companies even deal in trades for used sleeper builds. ARRI even mentions they'll take used trucks and custom sleepers as trade-ins, or buy them outright to help someone get into a new build. That tells you everything. This isn't some cheap upgrade. This is a whole market. Some of these rigs cost as much as houses. And sometimes, they are the house. And speaking of used builds, ARRI even lists real trucks with big sleepers in their used inventory listings. Like a Kenworth with a 132-inch sleeper, a Volvo with a 156-inch sleeper, a Kenworth with a 168-inch sleeper. These numbers keep popping up because this world has gotten huge. So the sleeper race isn't slowing down. It's escalating. But the next part is where things get even stranger. Because size isn't the only way these sleeper cabs get absurd. Some people didn't just want a bigger living space. They wanted extra rooms for things that shouldn't even be part of a truck, like a garage. Yeah, you heard that right. Because coming up next is a sleeper setup that doesn't just have living space. It literally makes room for a whole other vehicle. And once you see it, you'll never look at a normal truck the same way again. Part 2, 1,000 words. Alright. So you've seen what happens when sleeper cabs get longer and longer, until the truck looks like it's dragging a small apartment behind it. But now, you're about to see the moment sleeper cabs stop being a place to rest and start becoming something way more personal. Because when you live on the road, comfort isn't just a luxury. It's survival. It's mental peace. It's staying sane after a 10-hour day staring down the highway. And some drivers don't just want a big sleeper. They want a sleeper that feels like their home. Like the kind of place you actually want to go back to at night. And the second you realize that, you understand why these builds keep getting crazier. Let's talk about one of the most unexpected sleeper trends that has exploded lately, the integrated garage sleeper. Now, just pause and imagine this for a second. You're driving a semi-truck, and behind the sleeper, you have an actual garage space, designed to carry something like a motorcycle. Not strapped awkwardly to the outside, not hanging off the back like an afterthought, but built into the sleeper design like it belongs there. And this isn't some made-up fantasy concept either. ARRI has showcased builds like a Kenworth T880 with a 230-inch custom bunk, and it includes what they call a bike garage. Let that hit you. A 230-inch sleeper setup with a dedicated space for your bike. That's almost 19 feet of sleeper length. And instead of using all that space for just beds and cabinets, someone said, nope, I want a garage too. And honestly, it makes sense, because if you're living in your truck full time, you don't just want comfort inside. You want freedom outside. You want to park, open the back, roll out your motorcycle, and suddenly your giant semi-truck turns into your base camp. Your home, your garage, your travel headquarters. That's a completely different kind of lifestyle. And this is why sleeper builds are getting so extreme. They're not just for sleeping anymore. They're for living. Now let's flip the story for a second. Imagine you're not doing this alone. Imagine it's you and your partner. You're both on the road, day after day, and you're not just trying to make it work. You want your truck to feel like a real shared home. That's where these huge custom sleepers become more than just big. They become emotional, because for couples living on the road, space isn't just comfort, space is peace, space is privacy. Space is the difference between feeling trapped and feeling free. And that's why you'll see sleeper builds designed with full living layouts, more storage, and better separation between areas. It's not just a bed anymore. It's a home you can actually breathe in. Now, here's something else most people don't think about. When you see these massive sleepers, you might assume they're all built for rich collectors who just want attention. But the truth is, there's a whole second side to this world, a practical side. Because ARRI also lists used trucks with custom sleepers. And some of them are being sold at real prices that normal drivers can afford compared to the cost of buying. Brand new and customizing from scratch, and the listings prove something important. These sleepers aren't just random one-off experiments. They're part of a working ecosystem. A real market. Somebody buys one, uses it, sells it, upgrades, trades it in. It's like a housing market, but on wheels. And ARRI even confirms they take used sleeper builds as trade-ins or buy them outright, including different sleeper brands like ARRI, ICT, or Double Eagle. So yeah, custom sleepers are big business, and the more popular they get, the more absurd they become. Because once builders realize people want these extreme setups, they start pushing the limits. Now let's get back to the monsters, because you already heard about that. Kenworth W990 with the 261-inch sleeper. And if you're thinking, that's probably the biggest example out there, you're half right. But what makes it more ridiculous isn't just the length. It's what it represents. It represents the ceiling being broken. It represents somebody looking at the biggest sleeper most people have ever seen and going, still not enough. And the build has been described as record-breaking, with a massive wheelbase and that 261-inch custom sleeper. That kind of sleeper isn't built quietly. That's built to make history in the trucking world. Now, I want you to imagine something. You're driving at night. Highway is dark. You're passing other trucks. You're used to seeing normal sleeper cabs. Same shape, same size. Then you see headlights in your mirror. But the truck behind you is so long that it looks like a convoy. You pull into a stop. And when you step out, you realize it's one of these super rigs. That's the kind of moment these trucks create, because they don't just transport freight, they create a reaction. They make people stop and stare. And that reaction is part of why sleeper culture is booming online, right? Now, because truck tours are addictive, you click one video out of curiosity, and the next thing you know, you've watched 20 different sleeper tours, and you're judging kitchen layouts like you're shopping for a condo. And that leads to the next big twist in this whole sleeper cab world. The future. Because while the traditional truck world is building bigger and bigger sleepers. There's another type of truck that might completely change the game. Electric trucks. And one of the biggest names in that conversation is Tesla. Now, the Tesla Semi is famous for its futuristic cab design, with a center seat layout and a very different feel compared to classic long-nosed trucks. But here's what's interesting. Reports have pointed out that Tesla has designed the Semi in a way that could allow it to be converted into a sleeper cab setup, even if the current versions are mostly being run as day cabs. Right now, DOT and Tesla even showcased the Semi in Europe at the IAA Transportation Show, bringing even more attention to what the long-haul version might eventually become. So think about that. If custom sleeper builders can already create rolling mansions for diesel semis, what happens when companies like Tesla eventually push deeper into sleeper designs? What happens when the sleeper isn't just bolted on, but built into a futuristic electric platform from the start? That's where things get really weird, because the next evolution might not just be bigger. It might be smarter. It might be more efficient. It might feel like a spaceship. And whether you love Tesla or hate Tesla, one thing is obvious. The sleeper cab war isn't slowing down. It's about to get even more intense. But you know what's funny? Even with all this modern tech coming in, the most jaw-dropping sleepers are still the ones built by pure obsession, the ones that feel like a person's life story turned into a truck. And coming up next, we're going even deeper into the most absurd side of sleeper culture, where people stop caring about what's normal and start building what feels impossible, because the next sleeper setup isn't just big. It's the kind of thing that makes you wonder, how is this even legal to drive down the highway? PART3 approximately equals 1,000 words. You know what's crazy about these giant sleepers? It's not just the size. It's the confidence. Because imagine what it takes to look at a normal semi-truck and say, yeah, this is cool, but I want it longer, heavier, and more ridiculous than anything else on the road. Most people wouldn't even try. Most people would think it's impossible. But in the custom sleeper world, impossible is basically a challenge. And once these builds hit the internet, they don't just get attention. They become legends, because they're not trucks anymore. They're rolling myths. And the biggest reason they keep getting more extreme is simple. Drivers and builders are chasing a feeling, that feeling of stepping into something that doesn't even seem real. So let's go deeper into what makes these sleeper cabs so absurd, because the sleeper itself is only half the story. The other half is what it turns the truck into. A sleeper like this changes everything. It changes how you travel. It changes how you rest. It changes how you eat. It even changes how you see your job. Because at a certain point, a truck with a huge sleeper isn't just a work vehicle. It's your entire lifestyle. And that lifestyle is growing fast. You can actually see it in the way ARRI presents their sleeper lineup. They don't treat it like, here's a product. They treat it like, here are all the different ways you can live on the road. They have a whole showcase of different builds across different brands, with different sleeper lengths and different layouts. And that showcase includes sleepers that hit 180 inches, 192 inches, 230 inches, and beyond. So the custom sleeper world is basically saying, if you can imagine it, it can exist. Now, here's where things start getting truly insane. Because when you give someone that much space, they don't just add comfort, they start adding extras. And these extras are what turn a sleeper cab into something absurd. Let's talk about the bike garage concept again, because it's one of the coolest sleeper upgrades you can possibly have. ARRI has featured builds like a Kenworth W990 with a 230-inch custom bunk and a 62-inch bike garage. Just picture how wild that is. You've got a sleeper that's nearly 19 feet long, and inside it, part of it is literally designed as a loading area. That's not just luxury. That's utility mixed with freedom. And if you're the kind of driver who loves riding motorcycles, that setup turns your truck into your rolling headquarters. You work hard, you drive, you deliver. Then you pull over, unload your bike, and suddenly you're exploring the area like you're on vacation. That's a whole different kind of road life. And it shows you something important. These sleepers aren't just about being flashy. They're about making the road feel livable. Now let's bring it back to the king of absurd sleeper builds. That Kenworth W990 with the 261-inch custom sleeper. What makes that build so unforgettable is the sheer scale. A 445-inch wheelbase. A sleeper over 21 feet long. A rig described as record-breaking. That's the kind of truck that becomes famous even outside trucking circles, because it looks unreal. And if you're wondering why wheelbase matters, here's the simple version. The longer the wheelbase, the more stable the truck can feel, but also the harder it can be to maneuver, especially in tight spaces. So when you see something with a wheelbase that huge, you're looking at a truck built for straight highways, long stretches, and wide open spaces. Not tight city corners, not compact parking lots. This is a highway monster, and let's be honest, it's also a flex. It's the trucking version of pulling up in a limo that never ends. But there's another weird side to these sleeper builds that doesn't get talked about enough. The resale market. Because you might think custom sleepers are so personal that nobody would want to buy someone else's setup. But that's not true. I actually list used trucks with custom sleepers, showing that these builds can move through the market like a high-end RV or a custom camper. And the listings include different sleeper sizes, from 108 inches to 168 inches and beyond. So these trucks don't just disappear after they're built. They keep going. They keep getting used. And sometimes they get upgraded and reborn into something even more insane. Now you might be thinking, okay, this is all crazy, but where does it end? That's the scary part. At DOESN, single quotes T. Because as long as drivers keep living on the road, there will always be someone pushing the limits. And it's not just custom sleeper companies doing it.